my name is Ben. Welcome to Drunk on Life. I've got lots of videos about interrail coming up in the future, so if you like this kind of content, it will help me out a lot if you clicked that subscribe button. Welcome back to this third video of the interrail series, which is all the financial stuff, the costs of interrailing. I had a 3-month global ticket, which is a crazy long time. Plus I traveled for 2 weeks before that, so all in all, it was pretty much like 14 weeks of traveling. Fortunately, I tracked all my spendings in this app right here, which is called Money Maker. And I literally wrote down everything that I bought. Even if it was 20 or 30 cents, I would write it down here because I just thought it's interesting to keep track of how much I spend during this entire time. So, including food, including gifts, including everything, the cost of living for 3 months. So I wrote down all the statistics, did a lot of work, and I figured out that the whole period in which I traveled was exactly 111 days. And within those days, I only traveled 101 because those other 10 days I spent at home. But I only spent money, like from my own pocket, on 89 of those days because the other 12 days of traveling I was in Tuscany with my family, plus I did woofing in southern France for about a week or 5 days, so obviously I didn't spend any money there. So pretty much 90 days, 3 months of traveling for which I paid.
See if you can get a lift after this bridge in.
Now the actual interrail pass cost me 620 euros. That was an autumn special, so you had 10% off. So usually it's 670 or something like that. This was the youth discount, so if you're under 28, make sure to use it. It is incredible value. So 3 months, I can travel every single day. So that is an average of around 7 euros a day for traveling. And you could literally travel from Stockholm to, I don't know, southern Germany. Obviously, you won't be taking trains every single day, but still, it is pretty good if you look at it that way. For the entire time, so those 3 months, I paid 4,735 euros. I know that is a crazy amount. When I calculated it and I looked it up, I was like, before you like turn off and be like, this is just a crazy rich person, and I would probably think exactly the same. If I tell you what that money was spent on, it might make more sense. Now, I did work for about 2 years in a cafe part-time and then full-time before traveling, so I did earn this money for traveling, but still I tried to be on a budget as much as possible. I would even get the reduced tickets in Paris for the metro, which saves you 75 cents, but it's only for under 10-year-olds, and I got caught, so that was a fail. The average daily spending on all of the trip was 53 euros and 20 cents. Now, if I'd heard that before I was traveling, I would think I'm not gonna go on that because I was not expecting to pay that much. I probably calculated with around 35 euros, which was very naive. I mean, in places like Eastern Europe, it was possible, and often I would only spend 35 euros, but places like England, Scandinavia, I would sometimes spend 70-80 euros a day. I calculated the average percentage of what I spent on specific categories. So accommodation, all in all, for the entire time, roughly 25 to 30% of my entire spending. Now the exact average for accommodation for one night was 18 euros 25. In November, as I already mentioned, in Scandinavia, it was obviously much more expensive. There were places that were around 20 euros or 22, 23, which was incredibly good. Often I would pay 28 or 30 euros. One night in Paris, actually, I spent 35 euros because it was the only hostel available. So that was in a 12-bed dorm. The reason why the average per night is relatively low, even though I would often spend like 20 or 30 euros, is because I did catch quite a few night trains. If you haven't checked that out, you can watch my other video about that, where you would obviously save an accommodation and instead be on a night train. Then food was between 30 and 40%. I usually preferred hostels that had a kitchen because it would be cheaper. You could cook your own food. In places like Southern and Eastern Europe or Istanbul, food was incredibly cheap, and I made use of that because I would, eat out every day. However, in places like Scandinavia, I would never see anything under 10 euros for like just a snack. Now, the next category is transport. So if we look at the complete total amount of transportation, including trains, buses, public transport within a city, the ferries and the flight that I had, so literally everything, that comes to 1,369 euros and 70 cents, which is almost 30% of my total spending. So obviously accommodation, food and transport is pretty much the only thing that I spent money on. The interrail ticket was only 620 and my total transport cost was 1,400, so more than double. And that is maybe a bit misleading because you will have to pay extra for a lot of things. I already mentioned reservations and night trains, you will have to pay an extra fee. Public transport, all in all, was almost 150 euros. The total amount that I paid for train reservations, which are high-speed trains or night trains, was 177 euros. So the total cost of only taking trains, intercity travel, so everything that I'd spent with interrail specifically, so the pass including those 177 euros, comes to around 827 euros. I also took a few ferries, actually a total of 8 ferries, and 5 of them were overnight, and that came to around 145 euros. If you think about it, for 8 ferries, that is pretty good. I had a flight for 60 euros from London to Oslo, so that's all included in the total, again 1,400 euros, and I'd say that is not too bad. And that's the main part of this video, the transport costs, because food and accommodation, that's something that can vary depending on how you travel and what you want to see. Considering the places that I've seen and how often I traveled between countries, that is pretty good. I'd say that was definitely cheaper than flying. Even in times like these where flights are incredibly cheap, I'd still say it's one of the cheapest way of moving around in Europe. Again, I included everything, so not only transport, food and accommodation, but also things that I'd spend money on, obviously attractions, things that you would do. And that included 3 actual concerts. One of them was the Sonar concert, I don't know how to say it, Sonar in Athens, which was incredible. I only found out a few hours before. I met some really cool people there, and that cost me 445, which is still a lot. I bought clothes worth of 120 euros, mostly only secondhand, but still that adds up. I even included Christmas presents that I bought in London for around 60 euros. I'm telling you, I include everything that I spent. There were also quite a few expensive museums, again, Scandinavia. One time we went into the wrong museum in Helsinki. That was a fail. And it's funny because when you're traveling, everything seems so much more important. Like, looking back, I'd just be like, who cares? Who gives a shit? It's just 10 euros. But it's a long time, 90 days of spending money. And obviously you just can't afford those small things because they add up. Now, you know all about the average spending. You might have a rough idea if you want to do it for this long as well. I'll now mention my cheapest and most expensive places. So if you're on an extreme budget, just travel through those places. They will be amazing, you will have a great time, and you will not spend as much money. I kind of wanted to have both, so I knew Southern Europe, Eastern Europe would be cheaper, and I really enjoyed that because you could just, you know, live a bit more comfortably and eat as much as you want and blah blah blah. I didn't starve myself in Scandinavia, don't get me wrong, but I was more aware of where I would eat and stuff like that. But I still really wanted to see Scandinavia because it was just on my bucket list for ages, and I'm so glad I did it. Obviously, it was more expensive. If I hadn't gone there and only stayed in Southern Europe, probably it would be 1,000 euros cheaper all in all, maybe more, but that's just the way it is. So, by far the cheapest place was definitely Istanbul. It was freaking amazing. It was my first time in Turkey. I was there for 4 full days. I stayed in an Airbnb, living in a private room. I know Airbnb isn't good if you're just getting a full-on flat, because they just buy up the places where the actual inhabitants would want to live, and it makes housing prices go up extremely, especially in places like Greece and Southern Europe. Just try not to support it as much. And if you do, choose private rooms, and it's incredible. You will have someone from the city that can show you around, give you tips on cool places, and it will be a much better experience for everyone. So in Istanbul, for those 4 days, I spent 130 euros in total, so around 33 euros a day. There was one place where I got çiğ köfte for 75 cents. It was so hard not to buy like 4 of them, but I went back there quite often. And also they were selling those, I forgot the name, those sesame bagels. They were like 20-25 cents, just people selling them on the streets, literally on every corner. So that was amazing. Now, the most expensive place was by far Copenhagen. I don't know how people survive there. A coffee, just a plain coffee, would often cost $5.50. I could not get over that, but I went to have coffee anyway because that's what I do. I travel for food. Paris is obviously crazy expensive compared to other places. There was one hostel that was only 16 euros. It's called Auberge Jeunesse in Paris, and as you can tell from the view, it's pretty central. It's quite basic, but for the price, it's really good actually. Can't complain. There are places that are cheap, but if you don't plan properly, I often just booked accommodation the same day or one day before, and then sometimes you have to pay 35 euros. So for some reason my battery died and I never ended up recording the end of the video, which I'm very sorry. This is like almost a year ago since I recorded this, but I just wanted to finish off saying that most expensive places, Copenhagen, Paris, and just Scandinavia in general. I already mentioned food in Norway and Sweden is just super expensive, but in general you will probably already know which places are more expensive. But just to give you sort of a rough idea, if you're trying to be on a budget like I was, in cheaper places, Eastern, Southern Europe, you can live very comfortably of like 30 to 35 euros a day, whereas in Scandinavia, England, Ireland, which are way more expensive, you will probably spend like 60 to maybe 70 euros a day if you still want to see things and not just sit around eating porridge all day. I know my total sounds super expensive, but as I said, you don't have to do it for 3 months. As I did, you can do 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks. I've already mentioned in my first video all the different sort of plans that you can get, the different tickets that Interrail offers, and just get whatever suits you. And I am sure that you won't regret it because this money spent is worth it. It's not something on like material items that you'll forget about in a week time. These are memories that will stick to you forever, and you don't know who you're gonna meet and what's gonna happen. These are all my insights on Interrail. I hope this helped one way or another. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. You can check out my other videos about Interrail, 3 in total, and I will hopefully see you again in another video. I'll be posting more. I've got vlogs of Dublin coming up and just in general more videos planned for the summer. So leave a comment or subscribe down below, and I'll see you again in my next video.
ABC. Always buy Chesterfield, the milder cigarette. And Chesterfield leaves a clean, fresh taste in your mouth.